Welcome back to the Brothers in Business podcast. Today we're talking about balancing work and your social life. Now, out of the two of us, I think some of us do it better than others slightly. But I think it just comes down to personalities between the two of us. Now, I think, I've probably got to have a bit more of an even balance because, I've got a girlfriend and I think she wouldn't be too impressed if I was just focusing 100% on work. That's why it's important to get a balance between seeing friends, what you're doing at work, because you want to be able to do well and progress and add your 2 pence in and be that person in the company that people notice to get the promotion. But then you don't want to ostracize friends and family and things like that.
Nice little place to start, which is interesting, I think, for people that are listening. You own a company, partially. And, you are a director, you work really hard, but, give us a breakdown. How many hours a week do you currently work?
60 to 65, I'd say.
So obviously most people full-time is 40 hours a week, but, that includes, hour breaks here and there. And, if you're working 60 hours a week, you're doing an extra 50% on top of everybody else's average. Now, people don't think about it like that, but if you're learning a skill, if you're learning a hobby, if you're at work trying to achieve, sell a product, whatever it is, if I'm doing or you're doing 50% more than everybody else, expect to see 50% more results in whatever you're doing. And it's the same mindset for anybody that wants to be hyper successful in life. They are simply doing more. There's that lovely expression that, it takes 10,000 hours to become a master of any subject. But if you're only doing 40 hours a week, those 10,000 hours are going to take you a lot longer than somebody that's doing 60 hours, which is also going to take a lot longer than somebody that's doing 70 hours, 80 hours. Now, the problem becomes where there are only so many hours in a week. So it does become a sort of toss-up between where to start investing your time, because obviously you have to sleep at some point. When you're younger, again, you have a lot more energy. So as long as you're getting sort of 6 to 8 hours of sleep a day, that gives you between 16 and 18 hours of active time that you're awake to hit your targets and hit your goals. So it's about balancing the time that you've got to ensure that you are meeting the targets and goals that you set yourself. So for your 60 hours a week, what's your balance like? How do you feel about your current balance? Do you feel it's good, bad?
I feel like I've got a good balance. I still go out on the weekends and do, what I want to do and spend time with my girlfriend and then spend time with my friends.
And family.
And family. Well, yeah, but that's pretty much work as well anyway, so I can fit them two in, so I've done that well. But it's a good balance, but there's obviously some times where some weeks you're going to be doing more on one than more on the other. That's just sort of the way the cookie crumbles, really. But I think it works sometimes because my girlfriend works on every other Saturday, so every other Saturday at least I use that day as a day I can catch up with work and some of the other things that I need to do. But, your work split's probably slightly different.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a weirdo. I love work. I love what I do. So having a work-life balance, as they say, it depends on how you feel about what you do. And if you're someone that hates your job, if you're someone that gets up on Monday morning and just dreads the week ahead, you really need to stop worrying about your work-life balance and start worrying about just the work element of your life and making an immediate change. There's a real strange psychological process that can take place in most humans' mind where they become comfortable in the uncomfortable. And the point of it is that, you might be in a job that you don't hate, but you certainly don't like it or love it. The pay might be good, but it's not great. And you unfortunately fall into this complacency where you don't leave, you don't quit because you've just found yourself being comfortable in the uncomfortable. Whereas if they were to increase your hours by 10 or if they were to reduce your salary or really ramp up one of the factors that are making you miserable within that job, but not miserable enough to quit, you would then eventually start to move. And it's this real sad place that a lot of people find themselves in this sort of 9 to 5 rat race where they get no fulfillment in their job, which then translates to their home lives because they get home from their job or their work completely miserable, completely deflated, with zero inspiration for anything in their own life, which then translates to their personal life through their relationships, their friends and families. And other people are picking up on this. So with me, yes, I probably work, 80 hours a week some weeks, sometimes more. I've slept at the office before, work weekends, I think nothing of it. But when I do get the time off, it's kind of that work hard, play hard style mentality where I'm allowed myself the fortune of the freedom to do what I want when I want at the cost of working super hard when I do go in.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, again, for the both of us, has come from, again, our dad, that when he first started working with his dad, like our granddad, he found that the more he worked, I mean, you probably remember the story, but he used to make the little pins from the lathe machine that he used to work on. And then each pin that he produced, which took out, like, I don't know, minutes, say, whatever it was, that each pin that he produced, he could make money. And then that then showed him that every time he spent a minute, he would make money and he would see that money pretty much coming through. So I think that was kind of like a eureka moment for him, that he could sit on a machine and do the work and he'd just see money, like 1p, 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 like constantly seeing the money come through. And that almost molded his mind to the more he worked, the more money he could make. And he's kind of instilled that in us, that, it's slightly different now because you can outsource some of the things. You don't need to do everything yourself. But I think it gave him that fundamental, belief in, or fundamental understanding in money, that you put the time in, you make the money.
The thing it instilled in me was I'm a very competitive person. So for me, the thing it instilled was to be the best you that you can be. So if I'm going and taking up a new sport or starting a business or going into anybody's business or anything in life, I want to be the best that I can be. Now, sometimes I look at things and want to be the best in the world, but then I sort of hit that realization that there are people that have already got those 10,000 hours, started at the age of 3, and I'm never going to get there. And then I have that realization that actually I probably need to lower my expectations of myself, which is always a tough pill to swallow. But when I'm doing something, boxing was a big one for me. And when I first started in boxing, it was something that I knew, it was a charity boxing match, and I knew that I had 4 or 5 months to train. And I was training like a professional athlete. I went in 100%, where I was training 3 times a day, getting up in the morning, going for runs, training at lunchtimes. On my break, I'd have one-to-one coaching with, fortunately, I had a boxing gym over the road, and you'll remember that. Mm-hmm. Coming in all sweaty and horrible I didn't even have a shower for an hour's worth of boxing. And then putting my work clothes back on and carrying on my working day and finishing later to make up the time, and then training again on the evening. And the point that I'm trying to make is that, that was my balance. That was my work-life balance, where I had a goal and I wanted to win that fight. And the only way I was going to get there was by putting in 100% of my effort. And the thing, again, that Dad instilled in us is that, you either, if you're going to do a job, do it properly. And so when I took on that sort of the challenge to get in the ring, I dedicated my all to it because I wanted to win, especially in front of friends and family that I'd invited to come and watch the event. And that meant sacrificing some of my personal life, what people would class as their personal life, going out with friends, drinking, partying, watching Netflix all day, scrolling on your phone all day, doing just rubbish that we all consume our time with. And it meant being laser focused on that one thing.
Now, I've got a question for you there. Do you think from that fight that it was the fear of losing that drove you more, or the pursuit of winning What do you reckon?
That's a really good question. I have to think about that.
Now, knowing you, I would assume that it would have been the thought of losing would probably have pushed you more because you know that other people are there. And I think that can happen with a lot of people that, it's the thought of failure, if you've already experienced it at some point in your life, drives you to such a level where you think, I cannot let that happen again.
I've been thinking that's a really, really good question. And I honestly couldn't tell you the answer because part of me would say losing, fear of losing in front of a crowd. Now, losing on my own when no one's around is sometimes equally, if not more upsetting because the only person that I am really doing it for is myself. I'm not getting in there for anybody else. I'm doing it for, my own benefit of what I want to achieve in that moment, which was to win this boxing match, which I did, obviously. And I was fortunate enough to have the right friends and around me and coaches around me to actually go about winning it. But no amount of coaching and no amount of pushing from friends won me that fight. I got in the ring, I did the training, I leveraged their help and implemented it into my own training and fight and in the fight and ended up winning. And the thought of losing was, I'm going to go with that one just because I think losing for me would have lasted a lot longer for my own, my own psyche where I've let myself down more than anything. But also, for me, winning is everything. Yeah. And it's a really strange place when, I remember even anything I do, winning is almost everything. And it can be perceived as being a bad thing, because I'd like to try and be a little bit more fair when we're playing games.
Easy going.
Yeah, exactly. Or be light-hearted. I just can't. It's not inside me. And I used to cheat when we played Monopoly growing up because
fucking knew it.
But it was one of those things where it was too deeply embedded into who I was as a person that I wanted to win all of the time. And whether that's a bad thing or whether it makes me a bad person, maybe. But But that allows me to sort of, when I am working really hard and spending 80 hours a week, it allows me to go, well, actually, I'm winning here. And that's what drives me forward. So I do still see it as a balance.
I think as well, like the way that using that same boxing, the work-life balance between friends and family with something like that, what you did was you incorporated and involved family and friends within that thing you were doing. So, it's always a good sort of tip off that if you kind of just, if you are doing some of these things and you're just focusing purely on just yourself and you're not telling anyone, not speaking about it, and just keeping your own little hole, sometimes it's good to involve other people because, it makes them feel like they want to be on board with you as well. And then, you're going to benefit from it.
It spurs you on. And again, to be fair, we've done it and we've done an episode on working with family, and that translates to working with friends as well. So you don't need to sacrifice anything if you've got the closest people around you within the business. I've heard Mr. Beast talk about how he's hired his friends from school and,
I didn't work with one of them.
Potentially. Oh God, I know who you mean. We won't go there.
No.
But he hired his friends from school and he can offer them opportunity, and I'd love to do the same if we're still growing our business and, we're doing very well at the minute, and might be that eventually we can bring some of our friends on from school. Just not right now. If you're listening, you're not getting a job, so don't ask. But it's true. Having those around you, it helps spur you on. And it can also help because this is something that is plaguing a lot of people at the minute where they're either working too much but they're probably working too much at the wrong thing. And it's affecting your mental health. And it's a big one that we've done another episode on where we talked about depositing and withdrawing from a happy bank, where we've said, the more that you deposit into your mental well-being through diet, exercise, giving back, being with friends, communicating, being outside, exercising, all that sort of thing, compared to withdrawing, which would be working too much, staying in a hole, isolating yourself, just living in a cave and just not seeing the light of day. That is massive tolls on your mental health. But it makes it even worse when you're working for someone or with someone or even on your own and you actively hate what you're doing and get no fulfillment off it, but you're still sacrificing the time and the energy.
Yeah, and then you also get it that if you are working for someone else, the additional negative is that sometimes you might do something that you're quite proud of at work, but then if you don't get any recognition, then it again further just deepens you into that hole of, oh God, this isn't good. And like you say, you're just depositing in a bad bank at that point. It's not good.
What's one of your proud moments from work?
From work, when there was a distinctively big problem with a part that we were supplying for, a big company. And there was a point where there's like a line stop, which is, parts being built, cars, and imagine they don't have a bolt to build the new pink Jaguar. And, they obviously need this part to be able to continue the production line. If they don't have it, it doesn't matter how small the part is, they can't build it. So this is a bit more complicated than that. But the proudest moment was when that issue occurred. It was finding a way of a solution, going to the vice president of this, big company.
How much are they worth? Just to give a scale.
50 billion in the market cap, the big company, but then going to them with a solution, following through the solution, constantly calling, really not wanting to make that phone call, really not wanting to answer the phone whenever they called. You just feel like you're completely in a hole. But then to come out the other side when you've done it and tick the box and you've managed to, solve the issue, that was a big plus for me. And then it shows you that you can do it. We keep putting the work in. It was big for me.
So how did that affect solving that problem? How did it affect your work-life balance just for that period of time?
See, so that is it. So it completely changed because the work-life balance was, say, an average, the normal scales of 50-50. That was more tipped towards like 80-20 because you just couldn't do anything else other than focusing on that problem. Otherwise, it wouldn't get solved. So I suppose work-life balance changes daily or weekly, depending on what's going on in someone's life. And that's what makes it difficult.
And that was the point I was trying to get to. It's that it's not a set in stone process. Work-life balance is something that it ebbs and flows. It'll always change. And you just need to go with the flow on it sometimes. There's going to be times in business where things are calmer. If we think seasonal businesses, retail around Christmas is super, super busy. And maybe sort of in February, post late January, it calms down again because nobody's got any money and they're not shopping still. So that might be a time where you can increase your personal life, but maybe in the lead up to Christmas, you've just got to make that sacrifice where your work life for that period of time goes up. And that's about sort of like having that flexibility.
Yeah. I mean, and with it being Black Friday and all that sort of stuff. I mean, do you know whether, I'm sidetracking, but do you know whether they call it Black Friday?
Not a clue.
Because they go from a retail company normally is in the red, as they would call it in accountancy terms, from say like January to September, October, and they make all their money in the last few months, which is what they would call going into the black. And so that's why they call it Black Friday, because the retail companies go into the black in those last months.
There you go. Learn something new every day on this podcast, people.
There you go. But one of the other main things, I mean, it's a hilarious analogy to pretty much everything we're discussing. And, it's got it's right and wrong to what it portrays. But the film Click with Adam Sandler, do you remember that one?
Great film.
And it shows you exactly the road of someone who, goes too far one way and then realizes last minute and then goes back and changes things. But, that's, it's an extreme example, but people can end up like that. But this is the whole point and whole reason why it's so difficult to get the exact balance. And I think communication ends up being a lot of it with the people that, are your friends and your family, and talk about it rather than just, keeping to yourself.
It's about being introspective though, isn't it really? Because for me, my goal at the time of boxing was to do everything to win that fight. So my work-life balance, or my training life balance, personal life balance, let's say, was massively tipped towards focusing on that fight and training for that fight. That was all it was, that I lived and breathed. And if anybody talked to me about anything during that period, I'd have found a way to turn it into a conversation about boxing. That's just how it was, because it totally absorbed my life. Is that healthy to last forever doing that? Some would say no. But the ones that would say yes are the people like the Floyd Mayweathers keeping it in boxing. People like Mike Tyson, we've done an episode talking about him. And those are the people that are completely undeterred by the fact that they are looking for this work-life balance. There's no such thing in their eyes, because their work-life balance is aligned to their goals. So if their goal is to become world champion, then unfortunately, the only way of getting there to be number one in the world is to outwork every other person in the world. So if somebody's working 10 hours a day and he's best in the world, you need to start doing 12 hours a day to take over. Now, obviously, natural ability can sort of kick in, so it always plays a factor. It's not as straightforward as that. But, hard work outworks natural born talent every single day of the week, certainly in sport, in anything you'll do, really, in business, in life. Hard work will always outwork that natural talent.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, you look at Elon Musk's again, another example where he's just hundreds of hours, just obviously not a week, but just the most amount of hours you can possibly put into all the projects that he does. He just puts it in 100%, and that's why, like you say, yeah, he doesn't. His work-life balance is just a work life.
100%.
There's no balance to it, but it depends on really then what you want out of life, in what you want, and what, like you say, what your goals are. And the average person is going to want a very equal balance, and I think it's important to keep that in mind. But if you're one of those people that you want to be hyper successful, and you want to be one of those people who's the best people in the world, you have to put the work in.
That's it there then. Very simple. Decide what you want out of life, and whether what you're currently doing is going to help you achieve that goal or not. And decide whether the reward is worth the sacrifice, because a lot of people want the reward. They want that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, but they're not willing to put the work in to actually get there. So be realistic with yourself and decide what you actually want, and then adjust your work in life accordingly. This has been the Brothers in Business. Make sure you follow and subscribe for more, and we'll see you in the next episode.